Today, let us talk about REST API. So let's think whenever you are going to any build application, the generally applications are used by our customer in the form of UI, graphical user interface, okay, GUI. And here some label, button, drop down, so on. And here you want to display some data, you want to perform some action. And so these the UI application generally developed by the front end team, and whatever the data you are displaying here, whatever the edit, update, insertion data you are doing, that's are generally come from the backend application, come from the backend application. Okay, so the backend application. So how our front end application? This is our front end application. Front end application required to communicate with the backend application. Backend applications generally all the business logics they are stored. Backend application have their own database where they are storing information here, right? So they so our application, this is our application, backend application, consider backend and business logics that expose REST API. Because our application generally run on the UI on the HTTP protocol, okay, HTTP HTTPS protocol, and using this API, REST API is the one contract between the backend application and front-end application, how they are exchanging data between the front end to back end, back end to front end. So data or information generally transport from the back end to the front end or front end to the back end by a specific format, maybe XML format or JSON format. So nowadays, JSON is a more popular way. The generally REST API is designed the way you can send and receive the JSON record. JSON is a just format where you are going to store informations, and that can be transport from one machine to another machine. Maybe front end and back end application can run on the same application and there are different uh, you can say front end may be deployed in a different database, a different server, back end can be deployed in a different server. So the objective of here REST API is the way where our backend API or backend application can expose some set of endpoint. Sometimes a API, sometimes a endpoint. These are the terminology also you use. So let us think these the REST API how using the Python language our application can expose REST API and so that our front end application can consume those API. So for let's see, we are going to develop some API. Okay, these API. These API are consumed by some UI application. So one way you can test this API. Another way, lots of testing tool available. To we can test all these API via the different tools, maybe from the browser, or maybe from the curl, maybe from the Postman, maybe Swagger API. So lots of option to test the REST API. So we're going to talk. Okay, so I'm going to use the Postman tool where you can just test this API. Okay, so let's talk with very basic what is the REST, and then think how we can implement the REST API in Python. So REST stand for representational state transfer. REST stand for representational state transfer. That means any object at a particular moment, what is the state? What do state means? Maybe yeah, employee the one, the employee state would be employee name, employee age, employee salary. So at a particular time, what is the age of the particular employee? So those information maybe one, two, three attribute. Generally those state can be transferred maybe from backend to from front end to backend and backend to front end. So these are the just one approach. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So this is the interface. API is the interface that expose interface so that he maybe third-party application or my UI application or any application can consume this API. The interface is the one communication channel between my applications and my consumer. You can say. Okay. So here REST use as a consider as a interface from your application to the UI application, third party, any vendor can use as a way to uh, communicate over the HTTP method. So whenever your application, let's see, we are build our application. Right? This is my application. This application export API. So this API and maybe another service A, service B. These are my service A service and service B. Okay, service 2. We have exposed some here REST API. This API can be consumed by service 1 and service 2. So whenever two system, maybe system or software is system 1 and system 2. So REST API or REST is the way for the different software system 1, software system 2 can communicate over the internet. So on the internet, how these two systems are communicate, this is the one way is the HTTP protocol. So generally REST API work on the HTTP protocol. This service can communicate over HTTP protocol. The HTTP protocol have some syntax like get, post, delete, put, and lots other as well as. But we're going to talk some, so you should have it. So REST API use the HTTP protocol to exchange information or data from backend application to the server side, or from server side to the front end to back end to front end. So you can say REST API is a one way where two system or two software systems are communicate to each other. Communicate means they can send data and they can receive data. Data in the form of generally JSON, but XML or binary data other way as well as. So these are the basic concept. Whenever we talk REST API, we should have like resources. What do you mean by resources? So let us. You are the service provider. The service provider have some services: service one, service two, service three, service four. So those all the services you can say resources. Those resources should be uniquely advanced. Let's say this is a one company that provides services, maybe lots of durable consumer durable product or any kind of products. So all the services particular company offer those services are so as a consumer are going to access those services. So the piece of information like a user, product, order, these are the resources are identified by the URI. So these, whatever the your company offer the services, each service must be uniquely identified so that your customer say, I want to X product, I want to Y product, so that you can access. So in REST, whatever the service providers are considered as a resources, and each resources can be uniquely identified by his URL. Okay, and generally REST the communication happen over the HTTP protocol, so they follow some kind of a operation, maybe get you can go with a get method for if you want to retrieve data. If you want to create get post data something, so you have to go post. Maybe you want to some update data, you have to go to update data. You want to some remove some entry, you have to. So these are the get, post, put, update, and other modes. These are the mostly used, but this is not one you can say. Also, lots of other options we have. And one thing about the REST API is the stateless. What do you mean by stateless? Stateless means let's this is my service provider one and service our API and consumed by our client. So let's give client first request say, hey, give me data. Are you responsive? Okay, after that there is a no conversation happen. If you second time say, hey, I need a data, okay, so this application do not know कि this is the previous request or the, they always consider the fresh request. Okay, so here if let's keep this application say I need a data, the first this application going to verify here this is the right person, we are responsible to respond these requests or not. So each time your verification happen means each request is independent, server doesn't remember the previous request. So whatever the any times your server or API, and this is your client. If client send one request and they respond, then server not maintain any history. Hey, previously I already requested one sub. Again, this client say hey, request to this request to purely independent and purely independent data they receive. So there is no state or information is stored by server. Hey, this is the previous request. This is the next request for same customer. This is the next request for the same customer. All the required informations our client always pass to the each and every request. And generally between the your server and between your client whatever the information exchange happen, this is the form of generally is the rest. The rest API use the JSON format to transfer data. The JSON is the most API used to send data or receive data, but this is not the only option. You can simply transfer plain text, plain XML, or any form of binary data as well. So these are some basics. We cannot cover each and every concept of the REST here. That's the theoretical you can just explore. But let's talk in the Python how we are going to implement these in the Python. Okay, so building a REST API in the Python. So generally, REST API work on the concept of your server and the client. The server application should be running, and client application whenever they needed data they can call them and receive data. Again needed, again call them again. That means this server is an application that should be running anytime any customer can send the request and we should responsible. So server is a application that should be running all the time. Okay, and so that any request come and you can respond. So generally till now whatever we learn in the Python, we write one program and whenever run my program give the output your program is closed. So till now whatever we learn in the Python, we just write the set of code that run, and once your code execution done, program is terminated. So server client architecture is something different. If you return some API, let's say you return some methods, hey, calculate interest. So this method should always be running. So I'll do. So we have to follow the server and client architecture. So somehow we have to write the code that my application always running and open to listen the request. So the basic concept is that is the server client architecture. So here what happened, okay, whenever on your machine we have to use a specific application. Notice the each server have a one IP address, and in this IP address, that means one machine. This is the one machine by one IP address, and here can be run application one, application two, application three. Your application are capable to run multiple applications, right? So let us. I can go run in my Python application as well as the Python application I run. Okay, so notice on my laptop, maybe browser running, maybe video recording running, maybe Chrome running, maybe song player. These are the applications running on my machine. Okay, so let's just from the outside, another machine is try to communicate my Python application. So here, lots of let's keep first we know the IP address. because in the internet lots of node or server exists. The first you need the IP address. Say I need this IP address. That means your application client want to communicate the specific machine. They require the IP address. Now, this machine can be multiple applications running, Windows machine, OS running, Paintbrush running, video playing running, song going, YouTube going, right now. So, similarly, I can start my Python application, So, how this client know I am going to communicate to the Python application one? So there is a concept of a port. Each applications are going to run in this is A port running this application, this is a B port running this application, this is a C port running this application. Okay, so here say, hey, colon, we required some port. The port say this is a Python port. So our application go communicate to this Python port. So these kind of IP address, networking, port, and applications should always be running. So for those, we have to write some separate code. So our objective is not to build the server so that always be going to always be running any request from they can receive. So these are the things we can write in a Python or any language, but our focus to develop the application. So our easy, simplest way as early we want to release the develop the API and test. So instead of writing all the that's key IP address, port address, and how to our application going to the deploy on the particular ports, so all these things are the very static things. So instead of now as a Python developer going to write such a program, that's I run program, my program always run on a specific port, a specific IP address, and always continuous running in the loop. Such a code we are not going to write. So for that, we are going to, in Python, we are going to take the help of the existing written code that in the form of framework. So already we have lots of third-party library. Similarly, this is the library or REST API framework, you can say, that's available. Depend upon your application, which kind of application you are going to develop. Let's you are going to develop some very lightweight or a minimalistic kind of application. So this is the some framework available for the that way. Some full feature the framework, also some framework available. Some asynchronous and modern framework available. Asynchronous communication, like till now, notice this is the server, this is the client. Okay, client send a request and wait, hey, and server take a time to do some processing and then give a response. Okay, here client send request and waiting. First send a request, waiting, and then receive the request. This is known as a synchronous communication. There is another kind of a communication between the server and a client. Server and a client. Client send requests and don't wait. Let's go to the do another work. Once this calculation done, they will inform, hey, I done your work. The later part means there again this is the request and just forget and response. So here just send request and let them server perform the works. Once server done, then they will inform you. Here the client send request and wait. Once server done, then server response and receive. So you can say synchronous communication, request, wait, and response. Asynchronous communication, send request, don't wait, do other work. Once server will inform you. So these are the modern applications and some micro framework and lots of other. So the natures of applications are a customer requirement for a Python a community provided lots of REST API development frameworks. So let's talk some names so that you should aware. Let's say you're going to build very small, a simple application. So Flask is one of the REST API development frameworks that are available for a simple and flexible way and ideal for beginner. If you are starting learning, it's the best you to learn from the using Flask. And once you learn, you aware how REST API work, and as per your need of application, you can go to the different framework as well as. This is the also extension like Flask RESTful or Flask more REST. So these are the some more flavor also available here. This is a simple Flask and Flask RESTful. Okay. Sometime I say REST API, REST API, REST API, and some are the RESTful API. So don't confuse. RESTful API and REST both are the same thing. Only difference is that some types say RESTful application and sometimes say REST API only. Okay, RESTful API is the completely follow all the guidelines of the HTTP request protocol, response protocol, all the protocol, whatever they define, each and every HTTP methods they properly define. Get means only getting the data. Post means only posting the data. If we are not following very rigorously this concept, then simple REST API. Sometimes you can using the REST API, you can also do the some post activity. It's manageable. You can do. So this is you can say RESTful means they follow the fully principle. Okay, I see similarly Flask, more REST API. These are the all different flavor available. So this is very good for the beginner. And this is some fast API also framework for the Python. They can use the modern and fast based on the ASGI pacework, and they automatically docks with the Swagger and Open API. So there is a concept in a backend you can develop lots of API. Okay, so somehow our client how know our API request responsibility. So there is there is a community like Open AI Swagger that's allow very UI based REST API documentation, every request and response, even even tests from the Swagger API. The Swagger API is one kind of documentation from the web browser. You can send request, you can get response, and you know what the API request, what the API response is. This is great. Many applications are using the Swagger doc. In the real application, you always need to expose document to client. Hey, these are my REST API, and this is also support asynchronous communication if needed. Let's similarly, Bottle is also very lightweight and single file-based application, good for small apps and an embedded system. Okay, Falcon also is high performance and minimalist kind of a REST API framework that designed for the large scale REST API. Okay, so lots of framework. I'm not going to talk more, but these are the for the lightweight application. Sometime you are going to build a very want to full-fledged kind of feature of the framework for the like Django, the REST DRF, you can say DFR. This is also REST API development framework in a Python. That's many applications are used to build this build on the top of that, and they are fully supported about the object relationship management, authentication, authorization, and ideal for large and database driven application. So some application you are very large and also some database communication happen. This database communication happen. You want to from the object relationship mapping as well as so all these things support by DRF frameworks. Either similar another framework Tornado also is the asynchronous networking library and a web frameworks. Good for the long-lived communication like a WebSocket. Sometime you want our communication between the client and server is a very long times. I want to maybe a one-way communication or two-way communication. So those kind of application you can go with this kind of framework. Pyramid also is a kind of framework very flexible and scalable. That's a fit for both kind of small and the enterprise large level application as well as some kind of a modern framework for related to asynchronous communication, Sanic, Starlette, and Responder. These are the frameworks that support your asynchronous communication. So I'm just saying you should aware lots of kind of micro framework available like where you can use. So overall objective in the Python community, we have a lots of inbuilt third-party modules or library exist that help us. We can build the server client kind of application where you develop REST API, the communication between server and client. So let's talk in the Python. Simple. So let's see how we are going to the build REST API. Let's simplest we do the Flask. So this is a very simple way for the beginner, for learner. It's good. Can you start, and later part you can go and learn all others framework depend upon your nature of application. Okay, but overall the architecture, the way REST API is the same for each and every framework. Like you can send request, you can get response. So these are 5 steps, very simplified steps where you can build the REST API. First you have to any as you know in the Python you is going to use any third party model. You have to first install, just say install, if you're whatever the Python version, Python 3, pip install, just you can say this is installation done. Now just you can create a project file, maybe any file name you can give, and after that you can just say hey, let's Flask setup, means you have to Flask have given some kind of a basic setup. That means you are going to initialize this Flask your application. Just say hey, whatever the application name you want to give this application name, and this is the class provided by the Flask dependency. Just say this is the name I want to start application with name, and now the basic setup done. Then you can just define a specific endpoint. Because notice the REST API, or you can say endpoint. Here you can go into API, say this is the API. The API is nothing, just you write one simple method. You can just define simple your function, and this function expose at the rate whatever the your variable you define for the Flask. You can just say route and specify the URI. Mention each and every resources have a URL. So here you can specify the URL, and any one from the browser, from Postman, can access this API, and this your hello methods invoke. And whatever the business logic here written here you can get them. So this is a code written. It is a code written you, and after that, how to say our application run as a server. So there is just say hey app dot run. So you can just mention hey app dot run. So whenever run app dot run, they are going to run always, and whenever any request come, they are going to start. So let's look a very simple way. Okay? So first we have to install this. Okay. So let's install this. Okay. Uh, if you just going to first install this. Okay. So you can go from command line, just from this terminal, anywhere go and just you can say install. Okay. Install. Okay. This is already installed. Install done, that build. Okay. So now let us second steps. You have to just make one application. Okay. So let us just build one file. Okay. So this is an application review. So first we have to know, we have to import this module. We have to import this module. The first we have to say hey, here I am going to from flex import flex JSON. We going to request and response from our JSON, and this is the request. So this is a couple of library we are going to use. Okay, and this is the first thing just going to import, and after that you are going to hey start my application. Okay, so here say hey my application app name, whatever the name you want to give your application, and initialize this Flask with a name. And now this is the basic setting done. Now you can just go and define any kind of method. Let's define uh, hello hello world. Okay, and this is a simple method. Just you want to if you run this code, if you run this code, okay, if you run this code, you are not getting any. But someone going to call. If you're going to someone, hey, here you can go to call at this time. If you run again, it will give the okay. Okay, let's okay. If you run, you will. Okay, print, print. You are getting output here. But I want this method invoke anyone at a 10 years. Now notice my application is closed. Application run and close. So question is that how I can make this application always run. If let's say I want to invoke this application from hello world from the outside, I'll do. So for those scenarios, so, hey, no, don't worry. I am going to say, hey, my application. Already I'm using this framework. Say, hey, this is my application. Just use the annotation application and give the route. Okay, give the route. Okay. Here say, hey, hello. This is the URL. Just go. I'm going to say, hey, now I'm using the framework. Here, Flask is do everything by my. Now, once I add this line, just say, hey, application, what is this? Flask application. Just give the route for my application. This is hello world application. Anyone can going to use this URL hello, and this my application will be hello world, right? Let's just test. Okay, no problem. So now someone going to call this hello words. Now our application become a one. So now simplified, you just writing route and this. And now this Flask framework, everything do for me. Now this my application, this my method become the REST API. Anyone in the world can go and consume. I can deploy my application on the internet. Anyone can go to access. Okay, and here, so just writing this line, now my application going to become a kind of a server. They always running. They have one API exposed. Hello world. This is the hello world, and any client at any time going to the call them, and our API can respond them. Okay, so let's tell. So how we can say this is now our application done. Let's see now. I have to tell my Flask demo. Let's run it's for the as a server. How can say? You can say just if and just start your application. Okay. Simply say, hey, this is the name equal to let's main application. You can just start your app. So whenever this Flask have a method run, whenever say run, now notice this will become a runnable application. Now I can run this application, and now this application is ready. And notice this run application. Now my application is started running on, and say this is the HTTP port, and this is the port they given. Okay, and you can use the browser, Postman, anything. Even you can use this browser, and here say hey and run. Notice no resource because here you have to pass our this is the our URL. Here say notice now I am getting this response. So why here we can access this API when anytime you want to access your application. Okay. Similarly, we can also use the kind of Postman tool where we can pass this uh, hello. Okay, hello API, and you can send it. So you are getting the hello world response. So notice these are the methods by default: HTTP, get, post, put, patch, delete, head, option. These are the some methods which if we follow the regular see this rule, that is a RESTful API, else REST API. Okay, so in this way you can now your application is developing, and now here you can develop any number of API. Okay, so this is the simplest way to build REST API. Nothing, you have to just install this library, and after that you can just create the one object, and object say object dot run, and this object have a annotation route on which method you want to make available as a API. Just say hey, route, and the specific route you can give them. Okay, so these are the basic things which we look. So these are the five steps. Even not five steps only, you can say uh, just learn the, you can say we have to learn, we have to just use this, just create one variable of the Flask, and you can just say hey app.run, your application going to run. And any methods, whatever the methods you have, whatever the function you have, you can just annotate them. Hey, this is my API 1, yeah, 2, API 3, you can do. So let's for example, for understanding, let's build some couple of API. Okay, let's for the get API, let's create one any kind of maybe books, get this get the all the books. Here say let's books by ID, specify ID. Here create a new book. Here update a book. Okay, so this is the way URL, you can say URL, or you can say endpoint. So these are the API route you can specify. So let us example, we are going to the build some API, for example in API. So let us here in the same code, let us build some kind of first let's make some kind of your uh, whatever, whenever you're going to build a get API, get all the books. That means somehow we have a list of books available right now. So somehow we have to kind of storage our database. So let us example, this is the list of books we have. Book ID 1, book ID 2. Similarly, maybe anything. Okay. So similarly, let us assume we are going to make, for example, employee or customer, any kind of. Let us we have a list of employee. So we can create the employee, maybe employees. Let's create some employees. Okay, employees 1, 2, 3. So let's we have some set of employee. So now I am going to expose API like similar here. We have to get all the employee, right? So we have to expose one end API that return everything else. Okay. This is my assumption that today we are going to build this from our code base. Maybe this information you get from the database or from. So later part, sure, we will talk about how this information you get from the database. Okay. So let us build the API. So for building API, what we have to say? App dot. So simply what we do say, hey, I'm going to create one endpoint slash endpoint. Here the second parameter you can say method get post delete. Here I want to get means this API going to return the value. So whatever this employee object, simply say just return in a JSON format, so that I can say JSON, and whatever the list of employee we have, just pass. This is, let's say, employee ID, and this is employee detail, employee name and positions. Okay, everything. And in this way, if you now your application is ready, and go and test this employee application. Good part of this application, notice whenever you write any code, this application is automatically in the running. So whenever you can say it is the automatically running mode. Just see that, and now you can go and test this application. Okay, go and test this application. Just say hello. So notice the your URL check. So why? Because here now you can say 404. Your application is not till now. You have not understand your application with 404. You're getting right. So here you can specify the code I will. Let's see success. Then you can say you can specify the two. Even you can say specify API. Let's stop them server and again start this app server. Okay, so now our application is running and again and go ahead test it. So notice now I am able to get this response. Whatever the status code is given 200, okay, by default will come. Okay, so sometime you want, hey, so this is my get API. Someone call this get API, and we return all the employees detail. Okay, employee one, employee two, employee ID, and everything. So this is the way. So instead of I'm getting all, we can just develop, hey, I want a specific employee ID. So let's build API. I can just want to employee like a employee 4. So just I want a specific employee get. If you run here, still we have not developed some API. So we are going to develop this kind of API. So let us build so API by employee ID. So what to say? I'm going to develop one employee slash employee ID. After this, you say employee ID, and this is the get method. So what's see? This is the employee ID. This is the variable you can receive employee ID, and you can say, hey employees, this is the complete employee. Get employee because this is the dictionary. This is your notice. This is a dictionary. You can say map have a key, and this is the complete value. Your employee ID and the value. Employee ID and the value. So here you can say, hey, employee dot get. I am getting this value. If this is a found, then return 200. If this is not found, what happens if it's not found? Then you can say employee not found and status code 404. Right now, just test now. So notice if you want, my application should always be kind of not all time. I'm going to notice still our application say this URL not found. Why? Because our application is not started. So let's start with the debug mode. So there is an option like here you can mention debug true. So now once you there and stop there, and after that you not need to start again and again. Now your application is started, and you go and test this API. So notice I am getting the this data. If I am specify this, I am getting the all data. Okay, so this is the way now your application is start with the debug mode whenever you are going to the in the development phase. So now if let's say I am going to the build another application, so we have to not restart again and again. Okay, so let's build another application like maybe I am going to create a one new application. Okay, so let's I'm going to create the post employee means I want to create the one new record. So whatever the post means, now we are sending some record to here. We receive the request, and if it is not, if this is not found, they can say, hey, invalid employee. Employee also have some employee name field or position field must be there right now. Then what's it? You can create the new employee ID, and you can say, hey employee, at the new ID, you can add there and return, hey, new employee created. So let us now notice I'm not going to restart. I'm simply say, hey, let us like employee. I'm going to create. Here you can say I'm going to say post. This is the employee, and this is the body. Here you can say JSON format, and here you can say just add the. But each employee have a name And let's name is the Smith. Smith testing. Testing. Now I am going to say, hey, this is the my Smith test engineer. Okay, so let us here you can say receive. What are the input receive? Even you can print here. Okay, print. So let's whatever the your a request. Okay, a request input. Okay, a request input. Request receive. Okay, what do you request receive? One minute, this is the API method post. Whatever the employee you receive in the here, I am going to the request is the one module. Request module, I can say request dot get JSON because we are receiving the JSON format. This is the employee. Whatever new input, we have to validate is the proper name field or position field in here something. If not, then you can say at least we have to send the name and as well as position, what the employee name and position. If not, then we can say invalid, else we can just going to create a new id for this employee and add this new employee and return, hey, this is the new employee, this is the new employee we returns. So let's test. So here I am going to say here and just say send. So notice they have a return me the new employee. Okay, notice I here we are not going to restart anything. Restart automatically. Sorry. Here any change automatically your service is the restart. Notice the my whatever the request I am given here, like a Smith and position test engineer, they receive here. This input have a name already, then there is no error, and then they create one new ID and return them. So if you again test get API, all employee, you are just notice this is the employee 6. So this is the way you can just you want the specific employee ID 6, employee ID 6, you get the specific employee ID. Okay. So this is the way you can let's say you want to post one more record. Post API is just here and new ID manager. Okay, and again send. So notice one new record 7 created. Let's set all. If all, you get the this is the record 7 ID. If you want to check a specific one employee, let's 7. Okay, yeah, you want to let's test 3, you can get the 13. So let us sometime I want to now this employee third change. Now instead of product manager, they become a sub senior manager. Okay, so I want to change his role. I want to update kind of request. So for update, you are going to the put kind of API. So let's develop one put API. Okay, put API. So we have to develop put API. Just say, hey, this is the employee, specific employee ID I want to update. This is the what put API. So first, whatever the employee ID we have to get, whether the employee ID exists or not. What is the employee ID? If employee ID not exists, you can say employee not found. Okay, and if an employee found, then we have to just say what are the JSON update you want. This update have some name and position. Then you can say invalid employee. Else just going to the update the information. So they have a at this position we are going to put the update. Okay, and in this way, even you can apply the update as well as. Okay, so let's test. So let us employee ID 31. First, let's see pass and just change. This is my employee. I want to change if senior project manager. Senior product manager. Okay, I am just want to edit. If let's see, I push the wrong employer. So yes, sir, employee ID does not exist. If you put the right employee ID 3, it's the right employee, and notice they are updated. And if you get all, get all, and if you test, so notice employee 3 are updated to the senior product manager. So in the case of a put API, you have to pass the updated value and they will update the record. So sometime you want to perform some kind of delete operation. So similarly, you can let's build a delete API. Okay, and the delete API, you pass the employee ID, receive the employee ID, and if employee ID in our employees, then just function say delete employee ID, employee deleted, else say employee not found. So let's go and just check. This is our all employee. Let's say I want to delete the employee 3. You can say hey slash let's key 32. If I am here say a delete option. Delete option, go deleting this. Notice employee not found. If I say, let's delete third, yes, employee is deleted successfully. And if you check all employee, get all employee, just third employee, you can receive a employee not found even. Even you can check all. So notice employee 1, 2, and 3 are deleted. So in this way, all kind of API, very simply, you can develop using the Flask, or you can say existing framework. So notice here we are able to very easily you can develop this API. So we have developed this API like this API. This is the simple API. Get, they return the all the value. We have developed employee slash employee ID. This is the get API. They return the specific employee ID. Whatever the employee ID found, they return the employee ID, specific employee ID, right? Similarly, you have to post API, you want to create the new record. The V from this is the same endpoint. Here say post. Here say you just whatever the request you want to receive the request, and you can going to make the new ID and save the employee in the because already we have created one dictionary here employee. In this employee, we can added this the new position. Okay, this is a post. We created the post endpoint. Similarly, you want to make a kind of update. So update, we have to use the method put. You can say method type put, and here you receive the employee ID. First, you verify the particular employee ID which you want to update exists or not. If exists, at the same we receive the data, and the same ID you update the new you can say record, whatever the new record you have. And this way you can say hey employees updated. Similarly, you want to delete kind of operation, you can say method delete, and you receive the employee ID. And if employee ID exists in the my employee list, you can just say delete the employee list and the employee deleted. If the particular employee ID not found, you can say employee is not found. So very simply, whatever the method, this is a simple method. So API is nothing, just one simple method, and you want this method, this function should be available to the. Now this application is always running. Anyone at any time is going to access my application. These all application. So here server client architecture, that means your application always running, and client here my postman, or you can maybe from the browser. Hey, this is the maybe from here browser you can say hey employees. So notice we have received all the employees. You want a specific one employee, you can get. But here you cannot perform like a put update, because where we have to send my data. I want to create new record. Due to that, our this kind of a browser is not. Maybe you can use the curl command, or you can use some third party tool like I am using the postman to send a postman. Given an option here, the body you can put the value JSON format, XML format, any format. A similar kind of interface you can get from the Swagger documentation. If I use Swagger documentation, similar kind of your request you can get. From browser you can test the get update. So all these method like for get browser is sufficient, for post put or these are the for delete you can do these get and delete you can do browser, but post and put we can do from the, because we need a body, we have to send this data to the server. So these are the way we can very simply develop our REST API. So here similarly, like we develop every get API. Okay. So here we can get API. Simply say, yeah, this is the one resource, our URL. This is for get all. Similarly, same specific, you say book ID. You can get the specific book ID. Similarly, post API, just change the post. URL, post and get are the same, but here you can create the new record. And update, you specify the specific ID which you want to update, and delete a specific ID which you want to delete. So this way you can develop any REST endpoint. So here, for example, we created the kind of books our data set here, and in this book data set you can have got get API method get, and you can say this is the books, and you can just return all your books. Similarly, you want to get one book, so you can just receive your employee ID, and you can check in my books employee ID exists or not. If not, you can say if found book found, return the book, else say hey book is not found. Similarly, you can say create a new book. Then you can say the post API. Post API, you can just from post API, this is the URL. You can receive, and now for this post API from the postman, you can give the your book, whatever the book you given here, you can take from the request object, request.getJSON. You request the body, you can create the new ID. At the new ID, it's the new books you are created, and say hey, book one is created. Similarly, you want to update the book, you can say put method. Again, the specific ID you have to mention, hey, this is the book ID, I want to change. Hey, this first we have to check this book exists or not. If this book exists, okay. So in the postman, again, you send the updated request. Say this is the request I want to send. This go in the get input. You receive the request data and just say, hey, the particular ID, what are the book ID I am going to update. The particular data is going to the updated. Else, if book ID not found, you can say, hey, book ID not. Similarly, you want to delete, just use the delete method. Pass the book ID, receive the book ID, check book ID exists. Then you can say, hey, maybe delete or pop is the option. You can pop them and return, hey, deleted item. Else, if book ID not found, you can say book is not found. So these are the very basic and the simplest way you can develop your create endpoint, read endpoint, or you can say update endpoints, or you can say delete endpoint. This is known as a CRUD operation. Okay, here you can say using the get method. Okay, for sorry, creating, you can use the post method. For this is the get method. This is the update. You can say put method, and here's the deletes the delete delete method. Okay, so in this way you can very easily you can implement this CRUD operation. Very simplest way. Just you have to write the simple method. You just written a method for get, for put, for update, for delete. You written this method. This is simple function. In the code you written the function. Just use the library and just make the annotation. Hey, this is the route. Mention the API. Once you mention the route, it's become an API code base. Just mention this. This is the URL. This is the URL. This is the URL. Now your code become a RESTful microservice. You can say. Now this is your server. All this code become a server just using the third-party library. We are using here Flask. Flask. The Flask help us to make our existing code, existing method as a one service, one, and that's are going to running continuous on your IP address and the particular port. Okay, this port anyone at any time, any client can access, just so pass my IP address and my port. IP address, port, IP address, port, IP address. And after that, you can pass the IP address, then you can pass the port, and after that, you can pass your URL, what the API URI resource identified. For example, slash book. So your IP post slash book. So notice we have a did here. Your this is the IP address, this is the port, and after that your particular API address QR123. You can say this is the API 31 get. So this is your method, get post get method, your IP address, your 5000 is the port. How to know the 5000? Whenever you start server here given the port on which the server is going to start. If you want to change, you can also change. There is a configuration for it, but default they are going to, yeah. Just simplified way, you can just import uh, okay. Just simple import this and just initialize this Flask with application. Now from this API URL, you can define any URL. If you want a specific get post method, you can say, and simple method you return, and now your method become a service based or code base. So these are the very simplest way in a Python you can develop the services. That services you can say REST services. That services expose endpoint, REST API, and anyone can consume. Okay, so very simple way. If are using the any REST API development framework, because the framework means they have already. Why say framework? Framework means they have provided all the infrastructure related things for you. Just you write, focus on your business code. You can just write the code and say I'm exposing the endpoint. So that is the point for today. I have to convey how you can build the REST API in the simplest form in Python. So let's do practice. And it until you're not doing practicing, you not feel comfortable in a Python. If you want to make you feel comfortable, you write the code. Hope this information is helpful for you. Thank you.